The survey consists of 55 statements in 6 categories. Included are comment questions at the end of each category and 2 specific questions at the end of the survey that are designed to elicit further comments. The participants in the survey included board trustees, the president and his cabinet, faculty, staff, and students. This evaluation cycle, the board decided to expand the survey to include a range of participants so that you could collect data really from a true 360 multi-rater array. We were really glad to see this. Because of the expansion, though, we added a response option of not applicable because we figured it was likely that not all participants would be able to answer all questions with authority. The participants were asked to answer using the following scale: never, rarely, sometimes, usually, always, and not applicable. Never means does not meet expectations. Rarely means sometimes meet expectations. Sometimes means you are meeting expectations. And in one of the reports, meeting expectations shows as neutral. Usually means that you sometimes exceed the performance standard, and always you consistently exceed the performance standard. And then not applicable means that the question can't be answered because the participant hasn't observed the behavior. So the first report, and the cover pages on each of these 3 reports are the same, so you have to look past the cover sheet onto the next page, and it should show the favorable, unfavorable report. And that's the red, yellow, and blue report. This report has been redesigned in terms of its overall look. The data is the same, but the color shades have been changed. You used the same report last year, or you received the same report last year, but last year's report was in primary colors of red, white, and blue. But the report now appears with shades of red, yellow, and blue. So when you look at the report, go to the next page. Well, no, not the next page. Go to page 4. So you see that under each, this is the category, knowledge of LCCC, and then you see the summary. So each category, the first box that you see is going to be the summary for that section or that category. I want you to know that the report is designed to be critical. It encourages the subjects to take performance to the next level. If you turn back 2 pages and look at page 2, the report highlights the top 4 positive question responses, and then on the next page, the bottom 4 negative question responses. Now the formula that's used to identify the top 4 and the bottom 4 is based upon the most frequent and then the most infrequent ratings of exceeds and significantly exceeds expectations. So these questions may be different from questions you look at throughout the report that may have some positive ratings and may have some negative ratings. So if you move again to page 4 of the favorable and unfavorable report, you see that red identifies below expectations, yellow or neutral identifies that you are meeting expectations, and blue identifies that you are exceeding or significantly exceeding expectations. So then if we go to the next report, which is the frequency distribution report, and again, the cover page looks the same, so you have to move to the first actual page of the report. This report is for those of you on the board who are really interested in the details and the specifics of the responses. This report shows you the intensity of the responses under each answer option on a survey question or a question category. And as with the favorable and unfavorable report, the responses are arranged by category, and then within each category are the responses to the individual statements and questions. Now then, if you move to the third report, and this is often the most interesting report for participants, this is the comments report, and there are several pages of comments. No changes or edits have been made to these relative to grammar, punctuation, typos. You're going to see them. It's important that you read the comments with attention to their content. It's really so easy and common for survey takers to make typographical and grammatical errors when they're filling these surveys out. It's important that you know that each of the participants selected to take the survey came from a unique perspective. As you read these comments, you may be able to identify the source of some of them, even though the information is gathered anonymously. I think that comments are important because they offer additional value beyond what is covered in specific questions. They often reveal for you why a participant answered the way she or he did. And this sort of feedback identifies for the board what is on the horizon and what may require further focus. So let's just look now at the results. And I'm going to go back to the frequency, or excuse me, to the favorable, unfavorable report. That's the first one. So, are there any questions so far?
None.
Okay.
Don has a question.
Yes, hi Marty, Don Erickson.
Hi.
Hi. The selection of the individuals who responded in the various categories. Now, the Board of Trustees has 8, so I presume that the president's included in our group?
No, the president is in the president and president's cabinet group.
Okay.
I did fill out that.
Okay, then I understand, then Butch had that. The selecting of the 5 faculty, the 6 staff, and the 1 student. Was there some objective approach to the selection of those individuals, or was it by random?
Dr. Schaefer, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Madam Chair, members of the board, Trustee Erickson, that actually came through a conversation predominantly between myself, the board chair, and I think the vice chair. But they're selected by individuals of those groups who have had some meaningful and frequent observation or interaction with the board. And so it was the faculty senate representatives that are here, the staff senate representatives, the student government association representatives, and those that have been in frequent attendance at your board meetings. So they are really looking at the people who would have that working knowledge and interaction with the board on a frequent basis.
Thank you.
Okay, Marty, I think we're ready.
Any other questions right now? Okay. So let's talk about the results. 33 people were invited to take the survey and 26 people responded to it. So you had total participation of 79%, and this is considered a very good response rate for a multi-rater survey like this. The next part of this letter, let's talk about the highest ratings by category, and we have listed them for you from high to low. So positive ratings of questions that were answered usually or always are listed below by question category. It's important that you keep in mind again, this instrument is designed to provide critical data, and it focuses on opportunities for growth and increased effectiveness. So board college president relationship rated highest at 81%. Board performance as a college representative at 76%. Procedural effectiveness at 75%. Knowledge of the college 72%. And individual board member performance 71%. Then the bottom one, institutional effectiveness at 65%. So when you look at these numbers and then average them, the overall average positive response rate of questions that were answered usually or always is 73.3%. And this is considered average for a multi-rater survey. Now, I don't want this to alarm you. I want to talk about including the responses of sometimes, which are also categorized as neutral. This captures all of the questions that were answered as meeting expectations. And when you add that into the mix, the overall average response rate for the board increases to 97%. So between your responses and the responses of all of those who contributed to the survey, at the end of the day, the feeling is that you are meeting expectations 97% of the time. So I think that you ought to feel good about that. As viewed by the survey participants, the board is absolutely meeting its expectations. So if we add meeting expectations to the mix, you can see the percentages, all of them go way up. From knowledge of the college, with institutional effectiveness is the lowest at 95%. So on the one hand, as you're looking at this and you see some of the criticism, it's important that you also look at this and realize that overall you're doing a good job. Let's look at highest ratings by participant group from high to low. So the overall average positive response rate of questions that were answered usually or always by participant group is as follows. You invited 2 students, only 1 participated, so that's 88%. Board trustees, you're at 80%. Faculty, 78%. The president and his cabinet, 74%. And then the staff is at 59%. Now let's look at the lowest ratings by category by participant group. And again, this is from high to low.
Marty,
When you look at the category of knowledge of the college,
what page is
rated lowest,
in the letter?
so the president and his cabinet rated you at
I'll find it.
69%, students 67%, and staff at 50%.
Page 5.
Then the next category where there was criticism is institutional effectiveness. Again, you have the president's cabinet. We show them twice because those scores were the same, 69% in both categories. We wanted to capture the lowest for each group. So institutional effectiveness, the president's cabinet, and then you as board trustees gave yourselves 67%, and then faculty 63%. So let's look at the next page of this letter, page 6. Let's look at below expectations by category. So the staff group rated trustees below expectations in all categories. The president and the president's cabinet rated the trustees below expectations in 2 categories. Faculty rated trustees below expectations in 2 categories. Trustees rated themselves below expectations in 1 category, and students did as well. So let's look at the outcomes. You know, it's just really unwieldy, impractical, virtually impossible to give equal weight to each question in the survey. And of course, you're going to want to prioritize your focus as you look at this data and determine how to utilize it effectively going forward. You are encouraged to give consideration to the questions that have answers of sometimes, rarely, or never, because those are the questions that present the greatest opportunities for further development and implementation. You know, you may have trustees who are seeking more comprehensive engagement as it relates to the role of a board trustee. You may have trustees who are finding it challenging to become part of the team. Maybe some of them are eager for additional orientation or more training. Maybe some of them are seeking greater understanding of the dynamics and issues at the institution, and then also among the trustees as a group. results indicate that the lowest ratings overall came from the LCCC staff. Those responses may be a reflection of performance of the board, but it could also be an indication of a lack of communication and understanding. You know, it could be nothing more than an issue of perception. If it is the latter, how does the board go about ensuring that effective communication and understanding as it relates to the staff? You know, some of this responsibility certainly falls on the board itself, but the president and the president's cabinet must also be included. The board has only one direct report. So if the board is meeting expectations in all categories, the communication and understanding of these performance thresholds are not making their way to the staff level at the college. So that's something for you to consider. You know, I want you to make sure that you celebrate your success. Questions that are answered usually and always represent areas where the participants feel confident that the subject matter is well known by the board. And it's really important that you continue to build on your strengths. I also want to look in a little bit more detail at the favorable and unfavorable. In most all of these cases where there is red in the report, it's usually the result of one response among a respondent group. So that's something that you should consider. There are 3 questions where 2 people, 2 respondents answered a question as not meeting expectation, and I'd like to share those with you. On page 10 of the favorable, unfavorable report, question number 14. And the question is, trustees received the appropriate training and orientation to be effective board members. Among the staff, there were 2 respondents who felt that you were not meeting expectations there. And then let's move to page 17 of the favorable, unfavorable report and look at question 31. And that question is, trustees refrain from letting personal agendas interfere with the best interests of the institution. Again, we have staff, and there are 2 respondents among the staff group that feel that the board is not meeting expectations in that regard. And then now let's move to page 19. The board regularly reviews reports on student learning outcomes. And there are 2 people on the president's cabinet who feel that the board is not meeting expectations in that regard. So those are opportunities for additional growth and development. Also opportunities to communicate more clearly. But I have to tell you overall, you know, again, these reports are designed to be critical, but it's so important that you feel good that in 98% of cases, the board is meeting expectations. This is a lot of information to digest. I know that I think that you all received the report prior to this evening. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Yeah. So you've had a chance to review it. You've had a chance to look at the comments. You know, some of the comments are wonderful. You know, talk about what a great job the board is doing. You know, some of them point out areas that may make sense for the board to look at more closely. But I'm really happy to see that the board has decided to include a larger participant group. I think that only helps you to define more clearly areas that need attention and helps you function more effectively. Do any of you have any questions?
Questions? Not at this time.
Well, how does everybody, just in general, a comment, how do you feel about the results? Have your reactions been? Have there been any surprises?
Madam Chair,
Trustee Kilty?
this is Kevin Kelty, Marty, and
Hi, Kevin.
I don't find these results all that surprising. The one thing that was really impressed on me when I looked at it is how small, if we break this down by categories of respondent, the samples are so small that there's very high variability in them, and just a different sample could have led to extremely different results. And that's the one thing that sort of bothers me about this. I agree with the commentary and the survey results on institutional effectiveness particularly. I think I can agree with what people say there. Some of the others just, I'm unsure what to say about it. A different sample might come to a very different conclusion. So I think we should just probably mull it over a bit and maybe discuss it among ourselves.
You know, this is a relatively small sample. But it also gives you a window into the perceptions of others who are in a position to observe you on a more frequent basis. And you certainly shouldn't inflame the red area of the favorable and unfavorable report, because as I said, in most all cases where there is a not meeting expectations response, it's been on the part of one respondent. There's no way of knowing whether it's always the same respondent or whether it's a range of respondents within a group. That's one of the good things about this survey, is that it does gather information anonymously within responding groups. So if you're looking for a larger sample, of course a larger sample is better yet. As you broaden the sample, you are including people who may not have as close a relationship with the board, but have an understanding regardless. So, you know, those are all things that you need to weigh as you expand the responding group. But you know, this is a step in the right direction. The first survey was just the board. Now you've expanded it to include a total of 33 potential participants. You know, maybe next year you can expand it even further. Other
Bill.
comments? How did the data strike you as board members?
Bill has a comment, Marty.
This is Bill Du Bois. I would just like to say that a month ago, our board had a very nice dinner meeting with the staff, and all of us learned a lot that evening about some of the concerns and problems that the staff was having in their various positions. So I'm not surprised of the comments that came. I will just say that I really think this is something that we are all planning to make an effort with, because we've met now with faculty and with staff, and we've heard their concerns. We have them written down, and they, I think, will be primary on our list of things to think about for the future.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Bill. Marty, you were going to say something else?
I was just going to ask if there were any other board members who wanted to share their reaction to the survey results.
Dr. Kelty?
Well, I'll share twice, as long as no one else has raised their hand.
I always count on that, Kevin.
Really, some very pertinent information exists in all the comments. And I am not sure how we're going to make use of that data, but the commentary, I think, in some instances, explains what we see in the unfavorable, favorable ratings and in the frequency distribution. And really, I would like to talk about some of that, but I don't know that this is the venue to do that in.
Yeah.
I think, Marty, this is Carol, And I think what we as a board probably need to do is to take this information, look at it further, and take the information that we got from the 3 dinners, from the faculty, the staff, and the students, and take possibly a retreat or at least a special meeting and discuss these items that we've gotten tonight. Because I was kind of surprised with all the comments, but I knew that you would have the right thing to say to us to at least help me see them correctly.
Yeah, the critical responses are minimal. Because of the size of the sample, they seem to be larger than they are, which is why I wanted to make sure that you understood that the vast majority of the time as a board, as a whole, in looking at the responses to all of these questions, you're meeting expectations 97% of the time. That's a pretty good performance appraisal.
That feels good.
Yeah.
Ed?
Marty, this is Ed Mosier. Is there
Hi.
any way within the construct of this survey that, even though it's 97%, if we look at the very positive side of that, and we try to consider where those lack of success was, is there any way we can tie in and identify that area that specifically is focused? I know you pointed out those questions in particular, but is there any way to dig deeper and get any more out of that? You made some recommendations, but can you see any way to get a little deeper into that?
Well, gosh, there's an awful lot of data here for you to dig into deeply. You can see from the comments which category the responses are referring to. You can compare and contrast the comments with either the section in the frequency distribution report that is related to it, or the favorable, unfavorable report, and look at the questions and decide if there are actionable items that you can implement in response to criticism. And that requires discussion.
Thank you, and I think that's what the chair was hopefully considering to do, is that maybe at our January retreat, or as soon as we can, that we've had a chance to really dig through these and analyze a little more in depth as to figure out what we can do to address those particular concerns.
I think that's true, yes. And I think that we need to set some goals, because if we don't consider all this information, then we might as well not have done it. So we need to set some goals, we need to look over the information, spend more time on it, and including these 3 dinner reports that we have. I don't know if each of you got them, I think you got them. So we'll talk about that meeting later.
It's important as you look through these reports and dig deeply into the data. It's important that you prioritize. Take 1 or 2 categories or 2 or 3 question responses and look at those. And decide what you can tackle. And some of it may be low-hanging fruit. There may be simple things that you can do that will give you some quick wins, that will help you more clearly define your message as a board. Some of these fixes may be just a matter of process or procedure. Some of them may be more strategic in orientation. You have to decide. There may be 1-month goals, 6-month goals, 12-month goals. So it's going to be really important that you prioritize. Otherwise, all of this is much too overwhelming.
Don?
Madam Chair, I don't have any more questions for Marty, but I do have an overall observation of where we go from here, if that's appropriate at this time.
Sure.
I remember last year, when we got our report about the board evaluations, we read it, and then we didn't do any of it. And now we're saying, hey, we want to do something with this. We
We
got
need to.
some data that we can work with, and I also agree with Trustee Kilty that maybe this is not the time to do that. I think we need to have more opportunity to do our own research and study. But I would like to suggest that we formalize this evaluation process on an annual basis. That it's not just something that occurs 2 or 3 months, but it goes through the entire year. And we have enough, we have enough data here to work on. You'll have 2 of the topic areas that were in the negative, that we can definitely deal with that. And I agree with Marty, we can also look at the areas of why we're doing what we're doing good as well, and continue to improve on that. But I think my point is that I'd like to suggest that we formalize this over the total year, not just something that is done, say, in the fall, and then we review it, and then we make some comments, and then we go on and do our thing. There's a lot of, I mean, I keep using the word data because that's a nice neutral word. There's a lot in here that we can sink our teeth in.
Those are very good comments, and thank you very much. I do believe that if we're going to go to the trouble of performing this survey and doing it once a year, that we need to, I like what Marty said, do have our goals be 1 month, 6 month, 1 year goals. And I think that we need to make the plan to do that. And I think it's going to take more than the time that we have at one of these meetings. I think it's going to have to be a special meeting, and I know we don't really love to get together for an extra 2 or 3 hours, but I think we might have to. Dr. Kilty?
In response to that,
Yes.
we've recently disbanded a subcommittee, have we not? And
Yes,
so,
we have.
we could form a subcommittee to look at this and report back on various topics through the course of the year. And maybe make some suggestions for agenda for things to discuss on particular nights as they discover things in the data.
It's an excellent idea. Yes, Brenda?
Carol, and Marty, this question is for you too. I understand what Kevin's saying, and I agree with that. But here's another idea. Marty, is there any way that we have as trustees, as we look through this, send you some kind of response from us about what we would like to tackle first? Or is there a way that you can gather data on what we feel are some areas of improvement that we could be tackling first, and then put those all out to the board also?
Brenda, what are you asking of me? Are you asking me to, ask me the question again.
I didn't ask it very well, Marty, I'm sorry. Now that you've gathered all of the data from responses, would it be possible for you also to gather suggestions from board members as to what areas of improvement we would like to tackle first, second, third, that sort of thing? So that each trustee responds to a questionnaire or maybe even a single question that you send out, and then you could produce the results for us.
I could certainly do that for you. I think that your subcommittee could do that as well.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to walk away from a potential project.
Yeah.
But I think that probably if you form a subcommittee, the subcommittee could do that as well. And if the subcommittee wanted to contact us, for any sort of guidance or advice, I'd be happy to pitch in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Marty. That answers my question. Thanks.
Okay.
As I see it, I think that we should form a committee, as Kevin recommended, and I would really like to be on that committee. And if I could get a few other board members to volunteer, I would appreciate it. Don
I shall volunteer.
and Bill. Fine, that's great. Okay. Marty, I really appreciate you calling us. You've always been there for us, and we have a long relationship with you, and thank you very much.
And thank you very much for letting us assist you with this. This is very fun and rewarding work. I think that as a board, you're doing a good job. It's important that you know that nationally, most community college boards are not doing this sort of survey that provides this sort of information. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you very much, and I do think we're moving in the right direction. I feel like we're a pretty cohesive board of trustees with an excellent president, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. So thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thanks,
evening.
Marty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was a little painful, so thank you for bearing with the reports to the board.
See, I've been out of town, and this is the first I've even seen these.
Okay, so you need more time to read them and
I
digest.
Had a chance to even look at any of it.
Okay, well, welcome back, and we'll get on this. LCCC reports, SGA, I don't believe our representative is here this evening. Is that true?
That is true. He's handling, at the basketball game. A student assistant at the basketball game.
Perfect.
He said he would be here on the 18th.
Oh, okay, thank you. Staff Senate. Who is here to represent Staff Senate?
I don't believe anybody is tonight.
Wow, we might be done by 8:15. Faculty Senate. Rob.
All right.
Thank you.
He'll make up.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to, you have the minutes from our last, or actually
Yes.
our, two out of the last three meetings. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and the minutes haven't been approved on that yet. Certainly, the Gen Ed core is still at the top of our agendas going through. We have a fairly stable plan for the Gen Ed core. It's been hashed out, and we had a campus-wide assembly meeting on it. I believe the next step, although we have a faculty senate meeting this Friday, and I'll report back from Luann, who's on the Gen Ed committee, will let us know. I believe the next step is the proposal's going to go to academic standards, and I would not expect much change from them. However, the biggest step, and perhaps the hardest step, is going to be tie those courses to our institutional competencies, and then decide which courses are going to meet those core course categories. And that's going to be some big work that is coming down the pike. Complete College Wyoming, Mohammed and Joe and I and several on campus have been involved in that. Mohammed and Jose and several other faculty members were in Riverton last week at a conference where the Complete College Wyoming task force team asked faculty from around the state to meet. And boy, we gave them an earful. And I will say this, I went to that meeting with very low expectations, expecting them to present to us what Complete College America was. But they actually presented it in a light of, boy, this is our first shot, and we haven't even had faculty look at it. What do you think? Please help us. We want your input, and we need your input. And I thought it was a very, very productive meeting. And I do look forward to working with the statewide task force, and then whatever we happen to come up with on campus here, I think it's going to be beneficial. And I will tell you this, that the gist of the meeting in Riverton and what the statewide task force heard loud and clear from the faculty was, you have some fairly aggressive agendas. You want 5% a year for 10 years in success. You want to reduce the number of credits and increase the number of degrees, and we're here to tell you, we'll work with you on that, but we will not lower the quality of the education we're giving our students. And there was a faculty member there from, I can't remember which college, I think he was from Powell, but he said, you know, you want more degrees, we can do that. We can give out degrees like candy. But that's not what we're going to do. We're going to ensure that the degrees mean something and that the quality of an education is what's important. And the task force was not only glad to hear it, but certainly on board with that. So it seems to be an initiative, at least after reflection on it, that appears to have an emphasis on workforce, which is not a bad thing. But we can't lose sight of the academic side of the degrees and stuff that we're giving out. NASEP certification came up in conversations, and Mary Ellen Tast and Nick Bryant and Brenda Abbott were kind enough to do a campus-wide meeting and go over where we're at, what we need to accomplish, and timelines on that. And the NASEP certification is something that faculty are behind fairly ubiquitously.
Rob, what's NACE?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's
Chair, Rob, what's
I
NACE?
believe it stands for National Association of Continuing Education Programs or something like that.
Concurrent enrollment program.
Concurrent enrollment, yeah, I'm sorry, it's concurrent enrollment.
What's concurrent enrollment?
Okay, concurrent enrollment is where students in a high school are taking a class in the high school taught by high school faculty, but they're getting credit for a class, and it'll show up on their transcript as having completed a class from LCCC. In the past, the faculty have been extremely concerned, not only on our campus, but this is a statewide issue, with the quality that the students are getting. And are we actually giving credentials to a student who has achieved the same academic rigor and has achieved the same or passed the same types of assessment and gone through a course with the same types of outcomes that they would have on a college campus. And NASEP is a good set of guidelines to ensure that that very thing does happen. It is not just a rubber stamp. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done in order to get that certification, and I think it goes a long ways. And I would encourage faculty to help out. It is going to take more effort from our faculty. Those that are currently overseeing concurrent enrollment programs, it's going to require a little bit more effort and a little bit more time on their part. And obviously, the biggest onus is going to be in the high school to ensure that the instructors meet the same criteria that as far as qualifications and stuff, and that the courses do have the same outcomes, same assessments, same everything, so that we're comparing apples to apples.
Madam Chair, may I ask one more question? Sure. This is interesting to me, Rob. So when they look at the accreditation, do the folks who make the decisions on the accreditation look at like the course requirements and the goals of the course and the course outcomes, and it's all done on paper? Or does anyone come to Cheyenne and go to a class in which there are folks that are concurrently enrolled and grade it that way?
Are you asking me what NASEP does?
Yes.
How they know that?
Yes.
We have to create reports, and it's a very extensive report. And I'm just relating what Brenda Abbott had presented at that meeting. So if it is a real concern of yours, I would ask that the board perhaps ask her or Mary Ellen Tast to come. They know a lot more about this than I do.
Okay.
But there are several criteria and several standards that must be met. And if we meet those standards, we have to provide proof of that. And the standards are like that the faculty meets several times and visits the site. So it's up to the LCCC faculty to go to the high school and sit in on the classes and make sure that those classes are being taught to the standards that the LCCC faculty agrees to. NACEP doesn't come in and say, this course is good, that course isn't. NACEP comes in and says, does the faculty at the college certify that this course is the same? And
Great.
so we have to provide the documentation that that's happening.
That answers my question perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those are the things that are on our table now. And as an aside, the earliest we are, given timelines and stuff, expecting to be able to apply for NACEP certification is in July. And so the criteria is that we have to give them a year's worth of proof that all the NACEP standards have been met. And it has to be a school year. So you apply at the end of a school year, and you provide them certification that we have met all the standards, and then they review that, and sometime, I'm assuming in January or after, we will find out if we're accepted or not. If not, we can keep reapplying until we are. Brenda has said that at this point, our application is missing a few pieces, and a lot of those pieces are just faculty at LCCC who have not filled out the reports and certified that they have done what they needed to do. So it's not all in the high schools, but certainly I would encourage the rest of our faculty and all the deans to make sure that those, just if it's a matter of paperwork, I'd be ashamed to lose out on the certification for lack of a report or something. I will say that several of the programs at the high school, when we had started this program, have fallen by the wayside, I might say, that they're not currently offering it as concurrent enrollment because they either don't want to or can't meet the standards. And so I really do think this is a good process and a good certification. I think it's, I would say, from a faculty standpoint, this would be a huge feather in our cap if we could get this certification.
Trustee Erickson had a question?
Rob, would you clarify that last statement about concurrent enrollment that's not being done? Is that by certain types of subjects?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Courses that were offered as concurrent enrollment at the high schools, when we, and this has been a process that's been going on, my understanding has been 2 years, Joe. I want to say that Brenda started the groundwork on this with the high schools and said, this is, we are looking at getting this certification. And these are the standards, and we are going to strive for these standards. And Brenda will tell you, the certification is just that. It's something you can put up on your wall and say, great. Her main emphasis is to make sure, whether we get certified or not, that the courses are good courses. And I think she's doing a wonderful job of that. And so she says, even if they don't agree that we're meeting those standards, these are good standards and we should live up to them. And so some of the standards, and I believe it has a lot to do with the certifications of the instructors. NACEP standards require that any faculty member at a high school who teaches a concurrent enrollment course have the same credentials as we would accept from an adjunct instructor that teaches that same course here at LCCC, which is generally a master's degree in the content area. And that is problematic for some programs at the high school.
Trustee Mosier?
I really have appreciated this process in terms of having the availability of this for students in the past, high school students.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about a couple things taking place here. We're really asking faculty now to take on really almost an HR role to some small degree, because they're going to have to validate that these folks have their degrees, or do we have some other entity that's responsible for making sure those high school folks have the requirements that we said is there? And,
Just add, President Schaefer would like to.
No, go ahead, finish here. Finish here.
Okay.
you know, so I'm concerned there how we're going to process that. And if we're not having some of those done and they've fallen through and this is really a good system, how can LCCC facilitate enhancing the opportunity for students to have those? What do we need to do or have in place for our faculty to be more involved in getting courses of this nature available?
Well, part of the standards are that we, as a college, provide training for the high school, updates for the high school, invite them to, say, our adjunct training and stuff like that. That there are, some of the standards require that LCCC provide help to the high school instructors to get them properly credentialed. As far as checking to make sure, if someone says, I got a master's in mathematics, I don't have a clue as to if the faculty member is supposed to look at their degree or content. I have no idea how that would work, and I don't know. Joe?
Yeah,
Do you
Madam
know?
Chair, Trustee Mosier, we treat, and again, I can't speak historically, but since I've been here and since we implemented the minimum faculty qualifications policy, we treat concurrent enrollment faculty just as we would any adjunct faculty. So before they can actually be identified within our system, allowed to teach a course or do anything, they have to provide and have on file the appropriate documentation that would suggest that they've met the minimum faculty qualifications. And we do that working with the deans and with Brenda Abbott and with the faculty in some cases, but that's really an administrative process that we do. The faculty are not responsible for validating and ensuring that we have credentials on hand. Their role, and according to the NACEP guidelines, standards, is to make sure that they, one, set clear expectations for the outcomes and the structure of the courses, and then two, that they are working with or orienting the high school teachers to ensure that they're teaching to those standards and aware of the standards and the outcomes of the courses. So it's really a curriculum alignment and a quality assurance approach from a curriculum perspective that the faculty have a responsibility for. In some cases, is that going to be more work for our faculty? You bet.
Yes. And it does require site visits. The faculty is required to go and sit in on a class at the high school and observe the class on more than one occasion through the semester. So,
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for, trying to make sure that we're facilitating that process so it can take place, because I would suspect there are a variety of reasons why some of those classes have gone away, but some of it might be because we haven't had the support of the direction that would benefit us in being able to facilitate the occurrence of those courses being available.
Right.
The other part of this is I'm wondering if NACEP, if we have that or do not have it, are they still transcripted?
yes, they are. If it is a concurrent enrollment course, as in the past, NACEP certification does not matter. They will have a transcript at LCCC with that course. So if there is a concurrent enrollment course, say at East High for COAS for English 1010, they pass it. Whether or not we have NACEP certification, they will show on a transcript having completed English 1010 from LCCC.
Then just follow up on that. If they have the NACEP, how does this benefit the students at some point? They probably don't even know about the NACEP certification. How can we put that in a positive spin?
I would go so far as to say I think it would benefit them if anybody would look at that concurrent enrollment course, have any questions. It's like being an accredited educational institution or a for-profit college that doesn't have regional accreditation. The accreditation is just something that says this is certified to be a quality concurrent enrollment program. That's not to say that there aren't quality concurrent enrollment programs that are not NACEP. There probably are. I am not sure if in the future, Ed, I would expect as concurrent enrollment becomes a bigger issue that perhaps there'd be some colleges that look at that on transferring from students and saying that the concurrent enrollment courses might be scrutinized a little bit harder if they are not NACEP certified, but I don't know that. And I don't know that there's any way to tell. If a student transfers credits from LCCC to another college, whether or not that college could even tell if that was a concurrent enrollment course, a dual enrollment, or actual on-campus or online course.
Madam Chair, members of the board, if you have that interest in knowing more about the concurrent enrollment process or the NACEP standards, certainly would be happy to bring it as a study topic at one of your board meetings.
Yeah.
But just as some real brief back contextual information, the National Association of Concurrent Enrollment Programs really arose out of high school teachers and college faculty who had concerns about the inconsistency and the inequity in the delivery of college curriculum within the high schools. I think it actually arose out of Utah or Minnesota. Those are the two strong states, and then many states have come on. But it's a voluntary accreditation process that is out there for colleges and the high schools that they serve to basically enter into an accreditation, a self-study process, and try to meet standards that have been identified as best practices for concurrent enrollment programs. And they are things like ensuring that the faculty teaching in the high school have the same qualifications as the faculty who teach the coursework, that the content, the curriculum, the outcomes are the same, and a series of other types of standards that they suggest make a good concurrent enrollment program. So it's a voluntary mechanism. We've approached it and have agreed to be the first in the state to really look at this aggressively because of the concerns that have swirled around concurrent enrollment in Wyoming and even with Laramie County Community College. But as I think the faculty and certainly some of the staff and our high school partners are finding, this is not an easy process, and those standards are rigorous. And so getting there takes time. It's really a 3-year process for us to get there. We've made a lot of progress. In the end, whether we receive it or not, the work that we've done to adhere, try to get to those standards, I think is benefiting and raising the quality of our concurrent enrollment programs. And hopefully down the road, people will see it's also strengthening the relationship between the college and the high schools and how we deliver that coursework.
As an aside, Brenda threw out a statistic that I thought was extremely telling. She said in Laramie County, 97% of all students who take a concurrent enrollment course from LCCC end up going to college. Wow. That's, I think, speaks volumes. Not necessarily LCCC, but they end up going to college. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a wonderful, wonderful plan. I will say this, the Statewide Faculty Alliance, which is the faculty senate presidents from all 7 community college, and we meet a couple times a year. I brought this up at the last Faculty Alliance meeting up in Casper because concurrent enrollment is a contentious issue on many campuses around the state. And faculty feel that it's just being rubber stamped and they don't have much say in it. And I mentioned that we were going through this NACEP certification, and they asked me the same thing Brenda did. What does that mean? What is that? And it was, wow, that's great. We should do that. And so I think we're leading the state in this area, and I'm proud to say that if we get this certification, it's going to be a real boost, and it's going to reduce a lot of the apprehension that faculty on this campus have about the quality of concurrent enrollment and their hesitancy to even be involved in it, I hope. And it is going to be more work, and there is a stipend involved with being the faculty coordinator for a concurrent enrollment program. Certainly when the workload policy comes up sometime next semester, we might have to revisit that. But I really didn't expect to talk that too much about it. And like Joe offered, if you want to know more about it, get Brenda here, because she's the one doing all the legwork. And her and Jasmine are doing a great job in that. And Mary Ellen Tast and Nick Bryan are also involved. Mm-hmm. Things coming up for Faculty Senate that are of a concern. Advising is a big one. We have a new holistic advising model. I talked with Vice President Hay before this meeting, and she assures me there's going to be a campus-wide meeting at the beginning of next semester on the Welcome Back in-service agenda concerning that and presenting it for an open forum type situation. And I know faculty have a lot of questions about that and concern. Mm-hmm. That obviously has been a concern of ours for a long time. And The faculty job description and workload policies are soon to come to the surface, I hope, and I've asked Jose and Joe to let us know when that happens, because that is also a topic that most faculty want to roll up their sleeves and get busy on. Any other questions I can answer?
Thank you, excellent report.
Thanks, Rob.
And we have LCCC Education Association. Which one of you would like to say no report? We have no report. Thank you. They concurred earlier in the evening. President's report.
Madam Chair, shouldn't we make them stand for questions,
Oh,
just
yes,
in case? I mean,
Give them some time.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. I want to spend a little time sharing with you some information based on previous conversations, and you heard Rob bring it up again. One of the requests and initiatives from the Complete College Wyoming Task Force, as you recall, a resolution or draft resolution was sent to the board chairs of all the community colleges, came to you, Madam Chair. And there was a recommendation of the Complete College Wyoming Task Force to have the colleges, the boards of trustees, pass a resolution in some iteration of that. But in short, the resolution was that you would commit to a completion agenda and a completion goal recommended by the task force. It was at 5% each year for the next 10 years, cumulative. And was really to be an overarching statement from all the community colleges of their support of a completion initiative, a completion goal. I promised you at the time that I'd bring you back some additional information and perspective on this. One of those things that I think Trustee Kilty brought up was to give some clarity on where did 5% come from. So in your materials, you'll have a document that's called or titled Coherence of Annual Completion Percentage Increases We've Agreed Upon. This was a document that was developed and presented to the Complete College Wyoming folks. You can certainly read it if you want to go through it. In the end, what I will tell you is that the 5%, I don't know that I can argue exactly where that was derived from or where it came from. There were some consideration of the goals that the Lumina Foundation had suggested for the state of Wyoming. People looked at that, and the goal would have had us, probably closer to 50 or 60% increases, and folks said that's not realistic. Jackie Fries from Western Wyoming Community College and Dr. Joe McCann from the Commission did some work looking at workforce projections and total vacancies and tried to get an idea of what that would mean in terms of total job numbers, and they landed on this 2.5% increase over 10 years, just 2.5% over 10 years. And then long and short of it is through debate and sort of bantering, 5% seemed to be something that people felt we could accomplish. Wasn't just a short goal that was easy to get out there, would actually be somewhat of a stretch goal, but yet something that we could accomplish. And so unfortunately, that's really the extent of the sophistication behind the identification of the 5%. So what I did then was to try to look into and think about, okay, well, what does that mean? And would we agree, if I'm going to recommend to you to support a resolution on basically committing to a completion goal or supporting this, what does 5% mean for LCCC? So you should also have a pretty simple little spreadsheet, and on the top of it, it says LCCC completion goal targets. And what this does is it illustrates the total degrees and certificates we've awarded essentially for the past 10 years, 2001, 2002 through 2011, 2012, and gives you a look at what the 1-year numerical changes, 1-year percent changes, and the 10-year percent change. And then it takes the 5% target essentially and looks at the next 10 years to suggest what would our goal be for the number of degrees and certificates that we would have to award over the next 10 years each year to hit that 5% mark and to give you an idea. So a couple of things that I'll just draw your attention to. Over the last 10 years, our degrees and certificates, the production of those, if you will, increased by 55%. And I'll be honest, I think that was predominantly a function of enrollment increases. I don't know that we had very wide widely adopted institutional strategies towards increasing productivity. And so you can see the 1-year percent change. It varies considerably from 20% down to -2%. But the point there is, without trying, just based off of enrollment, the institution increased its credentials production by 55%. So going forward, with the targets that we have to increase 5% every year through that, would actually require an increase of 66% over that time to hit that 5%. So it is an increase compared to what we've done. Historically, I would almost say that if we just have enrollment growth again, we can probably hit a big chunk of that goal. So I don't think we can achieve it without doing some work, but I certainly don't think that 5% is an unrealistic goal either. And so looking at it from just LCCC's perspective, it's something that would certainly focus the institution, would set a goal for us to achieve, and I think setting goals are a good thing. It's not overly aggressive, but yet we'll take that work. It's not something that we can't achieve. I think we can achieve it. And so it just gives you an illustration of where we're at. And so the last piece that I share with you is a listing of the resolutions that the different community college boards of trustees have already passed. Eastern Wyoming College, Casper College, and Western Wyoming Community College have passed resolutions in some iteration of the draft that was sent from the Complete College Wyoming Task Force. And looking at it, in fact, I think Casper just passed theirs last night. On the back side of that sheet then is a draft resolution that I'm giving to you now, and based on some conversation that we could have after this, I would plan to bring back to you with a recommendation to pass that at your next business meeting. It is 5% over the next 10 years production, and really the resolution is worded like the others, which really says that you commit to supporting a completion goal that all the community colleges in Wyoming will increase their productivity or degree completions by 5% over the next 10 years. So it's not even specific necessarily to LCCC, but it's a good statement of a goal. And so that's, I'll pause there. That's sort of the background, the history, and some LCCC context on what a 5% completion goal would look like, and we'd certainly love to hear your comments and thoughts.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Kelty.
You know, this data that you've put together here is nice, but it's kind of an abstraction. And if you think about it, you said we got these additional degrees from 2001, 2002, up to 2012-13 with just enrollment growth. Well, we had the enrollment growth actually pretty early, and we've been flat or maybe even declining for a time. But the thing that's not on here is how much additional budget we had over those years. Now, you're talking about in aggregate from 2012 up to 2022, looks to me like graduating maybe another 2,500 to 3,000 students in there. And if you take the coarsest cut at this that you possibly can, it costs us around $100,000 to produce a certificate or degree. And that looks like we're going to have an aggregate additional spending of about $300 million to do this. This has to be done from increased efficiencies everywhere. And as Rob pointed out, even if we expect some of this to be done by things like concurrent enrollment, it still puts an additional burden on college resources, so it won't come for free, for sure. What would be more interesting is if we I realize we're not committing ourselves to this, but if we just go in and adopt a resolution that says we're going to increase by 5% a year, and then we don't do it, or we don't have the resources to do it, or we don't go look for the resources to do it, then we just look foolish. And I'd rather not even get involved in it. So what we need, what resources is this going to take? Not just how many additional graduates are we going to produce, but what resources is it going to take to do that?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, good questions and good statements. Certainly we can't achieve any type of aggressive change without having some additional resources. It's the argument we'll make to the legislature in regards to the changes to the funding model. It's been our sort of annual plea to them for enrollment growth funding that has continually been denied. So I think there are some resource needs, and we've identified, at least to a point, what those will be. But I will tell you that your first statement is correct. I mean, I personally, and maybe I can't objectively demonstrate my argument here, but I personally believe at LCCC we could achieve those goals just through becoming more efficient, not by spending more. And in fact, if to accomplish that, we would have to just increase the resources so that we are still spending the same amount per completion as we are now, I would say you should probably toss me out on the street because we haven't done our work. I think that there's incredible opportunity. The capacity analysis in existing programs, if we were to retain students, especially in our second year courses and our sophomore courses, if we could just increase capacity by a few percentage points in the second year, meaning we retain those students and keep them through degree completion, we're already teaching those courses. Most of the resources are in place to do that. I think we would address a lot of that. Just some minor changes to our academic programs that make these programs completable in 2 years, I think will make that change. So I would say the majority of this is going to come from two areas. One from enrollment increase, and then another one from efficiencies ranging from retention to other academic strategies.
Madam Chair, so you've talked about doing this by making programs completable in 2 years. And what are the factors that make them not completable in 2 years at the present time? I would argue that it's because so many students show up unprepared to start the program and require about a year of remediation. So that's going to be new effort. That isn't going to come out of increased productivity. The other thing, just as a faculty member, I know that the students who stick with a program and go all the way to the end are more of a burden than the students who show up and disappear. The students who show up and disappear cost the institution some money, but the students that stay and require advising and take all the classes and require all the faculty work to get them through the classes and so forth, they make a burden, and it's going to require more resources somewhere along the way. I don't see how it's going to come out of increased productivity.
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, I like I say, I don't completely disagree with you. The reason we have to make a purposeful investment in a new advising model is because we recognize we're losing students because we're not doing that work there. So there are investments we have to make, but what we need to do is get more of our students to advance to where the capacity is, where the high cost is, and what we're doing. And we're just losing too many students between fall to fall semesters and not getting them through their programs. Are there quite a few that require developmental education? Without a doubt, but those aren't the only ones we're losing. We're losing a significant numbers of students who transfer out from here, and hopefully most of those make it to UW or to a four-year university. Unfortunately, not as many do. They transfer out with 30-some credits and more. So it's not that they're just those that are having a few credits or stuck in the developmental education piece. I would encourage you, pull up a catalog online and look at the programs and look at how many of our programs right now require 3 or more semesters at 19 credits. They're just not, even for a full-time college-ready student, they cannot move through our programs in 2 years, or even in 2.5 years when you look at it. And we're finding that as we talk about general education, and our faculty are having to dig into those programs. So what our students do is they just leave, and that's one of the reasons we have the highest transfer out rate in the state right now. And so I think it's going to take a variety of strategies to get to this. I don't have the silver bullet. We're still working on some of those, but there are some best practices that we're implementing now that we believe we can get there. And as I said, I think having a goal that makes us want to perform better and help more students succeed is still a valid effort or goal.
Madam Chair, I wanted to jump on very quickly what Joe said, because when I was sitting here listening to Kevin and what Joe was saying, if I'm understanding correctly, we could possibly get to this 5% without having the budget increases that Kevin's talking about, with like the work we're doing in advising, which you mentioned. I know Judy's been devoted to that, and getting students on the right course right off the bat. We're hopefully going to get a couple new buildings here in a couple of years, correct? That can offer some more classes and maybe better classes and an atmosphere of completion. And then didn't Dr. Fierro start a course two where freshmen come in and start learning study skills and that sort of thing, also like a freshman 101, wasn't something like that built in? So I personally really like this because I think it gives us numbers to look at to see how we are accomplishing our goal of a 5% increase. You know, there are a lot of strategies that we could use, but I like it very much, and it gives us something to work toward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Good job. Anyone? Oh, yes, Mohammed, please,
I have a couple
stand up
questions
for us, please.
I have a couple of questions
Thank you.
for you, Joe. The first one is, what happens if we don't live up to that 5%?
Right.
And the second one is, why did the university commit to a smaller goal, smaller percentage than the community colleges?
Good question.
Madam Chair, Dr. Cod, I don't know that there's a whole lot of anything right now that if we don't make that mark, that anything happens. But what I will tell you is that the commission continues to be doggedly focused on establishing a significant component of performance based funding for the community colleges, and numerical increase in completions is going to be one of those metrics and things they would be looking at. So if we don't perform, and again, I don't know if that will be an institution-specific continuous improvement analysis or sort of a competition pool for performance funds. I don't know, but I would say that will be one area where we may lose out on funds that could be available if we don't start moving into that direction. And I can only speculate from the university's perspective. To be honest with you, I was quite pleased that they actually came forward and committed to something. Where the 2% came from and how they derived that, I really don't know. And I think Sarah Axelson, and who's the other person on the Complete College Wyoming? Patrice Noel. They would really be the people to ask about that. I just don't have enough background to know where they came from with the 2%. And I think their goals are actually starting later on, in like 2016 and 17, I think, if I remember correctly.
That's Trustee Erickson.
Prior to the meeting today, I was really thinking that I was not going to support this because I felt that it was not achievable, that the 5% appeared to be somewhat pulled out of the air. And thank you for Kevin's comments. But I also felt strongly as Kevin that what about the resources, the costs, the dollars that are going to be required? And then your comments where you indicated, Dr. Joe, that, well, we're going to do everything we can to increase retention, reduce attrition. And I think that's a key part as well. And so I've come around, and I could see myself supporting this. And then finally, in the resolution, in the therefore, the bottom paragraph, the second line, the Wyoming Community College has significantly increased by 2022 and endorses, I think that's the word that's key, endorse. We're not mandating with this resolution. We are saying we're setting a goal, as Trustee Little indicated. We've got a goal to go for. So I can support it. And I would make a motion to approve the resolution as presented to us.
Yep. And Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, this is certainly within your purview to take that under consideration tonight. I'm presenting it as information so you can digest it and stuff, and had planned on bringing it to you in a subsequent meeting, probably your first one in December for final approval. But you're certainly within your means to take action on that
I'll make the motion
tonight.
again.
A second?
I second.
And I'd like to speak to it.
Yes, discussion.
I think we've had a goodly amount of time to digest this. It was presented to us over a month ago. We reviewed it. Dr. Schaefer has given us the data about our own organization, what the other colleges have done. 4 other colleges have passed the resolution, and I think that this is the time to go forward and vote on it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Measure.
in the advocacy meeting today of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, we did have a little bit of discussion on this, but one of the things that I think is critical that leads me to support this resolution is that we're talking about a 5% goal for the community college system, not for LCCC, even though some of these other colleges have a little more focus on the college, whether it be Western or Casper. Our resolution, I think, is well-designed in that it's set up to support that for the community college system, and that the Wyoming Complete College America is for the system. And I realize that the university did take a little different tact on this, but I think what makes me comfortable is looking at this for the system, because I think you will see some colleges do less, others more, and I guess I would come back and have some questions about this, and I almost want to table this, but it would be really too late. I'd like to see how we come off with the 14 million to provide us the new base funding for our system, and that's where I'm with Kevin on this. I really agree with him in terms of cost, but if we're going to see the legislature walk by us, and I don't think they will, I'm seeing positive things out there, but that 14.3 million in changing the base is giving the colleges, the system, the money that they need to continue on, and that's why I'd almost want to wait, but I don't think we can. I'm a little concerned, because if we had that money in hand, I knew it was there, I could go with this resolution without any hesitation. But I've got some concerns because of that funding.
Trustee Little?
Madam Chair, I'm gonna look at the other side of that coin. I think if we're gonna go to the legislature and say we want money, we need to say, and we are committed to improvement. It's just the other way around.
Brenda, I'm going to go back at you on that and say the other way. The 14 million's money we should have had already. It's not for improvement. This is money that the community colleges asked for 2 years ago. We got 7 million, and we really needed 28 at that time, I believe. So I'm really saying this is money that is long past due.
And so what I'm really hearing you say, Ed, is that we want to align ourselves with the other community colleges so that we are a cohesive group. Did I hear you say that? Okay.
I agree with that, Madam Chair. Yes.
Okay. Okay, should we go ahead and vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Nay.
Okay. Did you get that, Vicki? Thank you very much. Okay, Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only other thing I wanted to update you on, I've been doing some research pending your previous conversation about student involvement and getting our students, ensuring we have that communication loop, and the concept of an ex officio trustee, student trustee. Not surprisingly, no other community colleges in the state have an ex officio student trustee or any type of formal student involvement with the board. Some of them do have the student government presidents come and give reports on a monthly basis and try to engage them that way. When you look outside of Wyoming, it varies considerably. There are student trustees, some that are actually mandated by legislation, built into trustees or regent bylaws. There are some that have just created their own opportunity for ex officio trustees to student trustees to a board. Some are connected directly to student organizations. Some are through an application process. Some are 1 year. Some are 2 year. Some have a scholarship attached to it. There really are some unique ways that boards of trustees have brought students into the formal conversation and given them a seat at the table. I've asked some folks in Illinois who do this, and they say there are great benefits to it. There are also some challenges. One of the campuses has a 2-year appointment, and because of the volatility in enrollment, sometimes they have trouble keeping somebody for 2 years. 1 year oftentimes doesn't give a student enough time to actually get acclimated and become engaged. attendance, is a struggle as well. And so I think there's a variety of different options and ways to do this. And really what I wanted to bring back to you and to get your direction on is it's feasible, it's viable. We would be the first in Wyoming to do this. And I'm happy to put together a formal proposal to you on what that would look like, how we might have to change your policy on board representation. We should probably do it to formalize the ex officio appointment from the Albany County campus anyways. But I'm happy to bring that forward and bring a proposal to you. I just wanted to share with you sort of what I found and get some sense that this is still something that's of interest to the board.
I really like the idea, but sitting here tonight and having the president of SGA not present for the second meeting in a row, I'm thinking sometimes these students are quite busy living their lives and being students, which is what they're here for. So I was thinking to keep it simple, that we would have the president of SGA be ex officio student person on our board. But I don't know, I think we need to open it for discussion. Trustee Erickson?
Yeah, the question comes up to me. I like the idea too. I think that it would provide a good input for us and also a means of increasing the communication back to the student body. My question would be, what would be the selection process? And you would address that in your proposal. And I'm not at all sure I would saddle the president of the student government with that additional duty. But I think they need to be elected somehow during the election, during the selection process.
Trustee Kelty?
Why wouldn't it be possible to just make this another office that would be elected through the elective procedures at LCCC for other student offices? And it would just be another office, wouldn't have to be covered by the president, reduce their workload and so forth. Doesn't
Madam
seem like
Chair.
that's too difficult.
Trustee Mosier?
I agree with Trustee Gilty on that, but I might add to that they ought to have an alternate, because I think we do see that students do have the conflicts, and I think if you've got an alternate there, it's two positions they elect. They could figure that out, but I think it would be helpful if you had more than one assigned to that task.
Excellent, yes. So is that the feeling of the board? Okay.
No, the feeling of the board, as I understand it, is that Dr. Schaefer will come back to us with a proposal.
Yes, that is exactly right. Okay.
Madam Chair, I
Thank you.
will do that, and that concludes my report unless there's other questions for me.
I think not. Okay. Board reports. Number one, the capital campaign. I think that what I would like to do is, since the capital campaign has been successful, that we will go ahead and rename the capital campaign committee the Building Forward Committee, if the two people, Bill Du Bois and Don Erickson, will remain on that committee and report back to us about the Building Forward movement.
Oh, fine. I would like to say something with regards to the report, though.
Absolutely, sure.
There was a great euphoria 2 weeks ago when we passed the bond issue and we were here and we could celebrate. But tonight, and of course now we do have Dan here tonight to talk to us about the final polling and the whole process. But the queen pin of the whole thing, of the whole event, was not able to be with us 2 weeks ago, and I would certainly like to acknowledge the fact that she's here tonight, and we should give her a tremendous vote of thanks.
We will do that right now. Lisa? Thank you. And Lisa will speak soon. She is on my agenda, so thank you. Don?
I'd just like to have maybe a little more description of what our duty is. Are you suggesting that the steering committee between the foundation and the board and other members of LCCC, that steering committee continue as the Building Forward Committee?
I believe that is true, yes.
And that you are expecting us to move forward with what? To see whether or not we're going to get the legislative support to make sure that the The Building Forward task forces, or the steering committees for each building, are reporting back to us. I'm asking for just a little description of our duties. Maybe we can work that out.
Lisa, would you like to speak to that, or do you want to wait and speak to that?
I'm happy to, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
President Schiff.
There's still a process before us and steps before us before we have all the funding in place. And I don't know if the steering committee will stay formally intact in its entirety. Certainly, there is some private giving that we are still examining and looking at, and we'll need a group to do that. And then there's, of course, the legislative process. What I would propose is that you two become my partner in moving through some of that process, but really not asking you to do the work, rather to be there, that we would share in sort of the process and progress, and you would be able to report that back to the board as we move through the remaining steps to get the final funding and authorization.
You have a letter in your name before me. Is that okay with you?
Perfect.
Okay, it's perfect with me too.
So you two are agreeable.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Lisa, for backing me up. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Finance and Facilities, Kevin and Ed.
Kevin was entertaining other activities at the moment, and could not attend that meeting, so I'll do my best to cover his tracks, which is difficult to do. We had the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, and a number of topics on the agenda that day, and one we're going to come to a little bit later is the legal services contract. So that will take care of itself in the process we have this evening. We talked a little bit about the level 3 design process. And when I say a little bit, Tim was there, and my question, and a question I think a lot of people have had, how do we move forward now that we're using the state construction management group to run this? Because in the past, we ran a project, as Tim and I we talked about in the committee there, that in the past, we set up then the committees here, we being the college and the architect, to work through and work on the design, and who was a part of that process to determine some of the issues about what space is used for what and things like that. A lot of that's already been somewhat decided, but really getting down to the nitty-gritty. And my understanding is, based on what Tim was telling me, that's still going to be much the same, even though they're going to run it through the state. We have the kind of relationship where we'll have those committees and can work with the folks here on campus in the design of both those facilities. So I was pleased to hear that, because I was concerned about us having, say in what we're putting up, and not just being left in the hands of someone else. Then we talked about campus safety protocol, and during the advocacy committee today for WAC, that was also something else that is part of our legislative agenda to some degree. And the things that are going on here in terms of campus security, I think are a great step forward. The relationship with the police department, the difficulty in wayfinding that Trustee Kilty had asked about at the last meeting. I felt very confident that they had overcome some of those challenges, in particular through the communication tools that they have and the arrangement of how those officers will be utilized. So I think that's a very positive situation. Another issue that had come up was timekeeping, and that's the new clocks. And I believe, and it's my lucky number, so I'm not sure how you guys decided on that. I didn't ask Carol that day, but my understanding is you have 13 clocks, and that is the number I prefer, and so thanks for doing that.
I don't understand 13 clocks. Sounds like a bad movie.
Well, there were times, I think Carol would agree, when maybe that was a bad movie, but I believe, based on the report that Carol provided, a number of the issues, and I think they have worked through a number of different scenarios to assist the employees who are involved in terms of how to deal with the time clock and the consistency. I know we'd heard from employees at different times about consistency and really wanting consistency to be in place in terms of decisions, procedures relative to the use of those clocks, and you had a question?
Confused. The time clocks, the
Yes.
punch, the time clocks that
Yes.
they put their time
Yes.
clocks in and get the.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I don't know if everybody else understood that.
I'm sorry. And you, if I understand correctly, you wouldn't even necessarily have to do the time clock. You can do this on a computer also. So that's a little bit deceptive, but the bottom line is, without getting into detail, and if you want the detail, we can go through some of the forms, but I think many of the issues are and have been researched, developed solutions to those, and I think through the January training and the February implementation, and based on the experiences for those test groups, I think this will go much better and be in place. And I, as a trustee, would say that, you know, at first when I heard about these time clocks, I'm going, do we really need this? But then, as it was explained to me, and as I understand the situation as far as Fair Labor Standards and other issues, this really is going to benefit, I think, the employees in the college and lead to that consistency that we all are seeking. As far as the review of the monthly financial statements, the only thing I would remind you of on that would be next year, or at the end of this year, we will write off and no longer at that point see the building trades information, the dollars and cents related to that. But we have to wait till the end of the fiscal year for that to take place. And
Just to remove the line item?
Yes.
It's already zero, right?
yes, well, would,
Fund balance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And one other thing, I would just simply, we need to kind of keep an eye on, Kevin and I will keep you apprised of that, but I think it's just an aberration there, but we need to, you know, always pay attention to all items, but the CDC, I think, is something that we want to keep our focus on.
Okay.
Other than that, I'd recommend approval of our financial statements.
Second.
I don't think we have to.
We don't have to.
It's a
Well,
committee
it-
Well, it's
report.
under consent agenda, but why don't we wait until we get there?
Okay.
So, we're not quite there. So I think you're next, you and Brenda, for the WACCT report.
And Ed's in this one all alone too, because I was
Ed does a yeoman's
working
work.
and I know, he's great.
Sometimes I stay out of trouble, but not always. We had a phone meeting today, and the advocacy, just for clarity, so you know, these are one trustee, could be two, but one trustee from each of the community colleges is, so to speak, a voting member of the advocacy committee, which is a subcommittee of the board, which is consists of 2 members from every community college. So this is a sub-part of that. And we were working today on the legislative agenda, and Dr. Schaefer provided us with information regarding that agenda at our last board meeting. He covered the 6 items. I'll just remind you of those very quickly. Funding model modifications, and that was the 14 million you heard me reference earlier this evening. To put that in the base and then recalibrate every 4 years. There is a risk on that we talked about, and that risk is you're waiting 4 years and you don't know if you're going to get it in the next session, the recalibration. So but there's always a risk with the legislature. We've known that. Salary increases, we will be with the University of Wyoming and the governor really in terms of supporting salary increases. That will be the item. And these 6 items are not meant to be in priority order. They're simply the listing. Another one was, third, if you would, is adjustment to the major maintenance factor. And we're doing a little research on this. We're not exactly sure what percentage of what. And Carol, I would just ask, if I could, Madam Chair, if she knows the 1.25 or 1 point factor, maybe Carol or Joe, I don't know which of you. Do either one of you, can you tell me what that 1.5 is a factor of for the major maintenance? Is that of co-lease bonus money or?
No, because that's a separate pot of money. And offhand, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, if I remember correctly, this has something to do with the calculation of total square footage and major maintenance liability that exists within the campuses. The legislature applies a factor to get to a biennial appropriation that then is put on the books. And so if you have, for example, we have $13 million essentially of major maintenance needs at this point because they believe in phased in, they would apply the 1.25, is that what it is now?
Yes.
As a factor, and that becomes the amount that they put into the budget for appropriation to be distributed amongst the campuses. That's what I believe that it is. We'll verify that and validate that. But
You really, by stating that, you really kind of recharged my memory, and yes, I totally agree with that. That's the basis for that. We want to move that from 1.25 to 1.5, and that used to be a 1.5 and had been reduced, and now we're asking that to move back. Capital construction requests, we're supporting those as the commission put them in. And again, our projects, as Dr. Schaefer reported, are 1, 2 in order on that. And we also want to pursue, if at all possible, because we've used it all, as Lisa Murphy could tell us, the endowment challenge matching funds. Those are all consumed, and so the university and the community colleges would like to seek and see what the legislators can do for us in terms of that type of funding again. And the final one is campus security. And on campus security, it is a continuing challenge for us to try to provide the most safe environment that we can throughout the state for our students. And in light of that, Dr. Schaefer and our folks here in security, Leslie Nutting and some others have been working hard. There is a draft bill that we are in the process of having, I believe Steve Ballmer has submitted it to LSO. They'll put it in statute language, and we're looking forward to supporting that as something that we look forward to. And the intent, without getting into detail on it, the intent is to get the legislature to provide funding for research to determine what would constitute and how we should provide security on campuses throughout the state, both the university and community colleges. And hopefully we can get this study so that we can pursue this in a very calm manner and not have, obviously it's a Second Amendment issue, and there'll be a lot of issues that will come up, a lot of emotion to that. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we're doing this in a very calm fashion to provide the best we can for the students. And with that, the only other thing I would mention is, and Brenda, and for the rest of you who might like to, December 12th will be a retreat for the Wyoming Community College Commission in Rock Springs, and the public, of course, can attend that. I will try to go at least half the day on the 12th, if not all, and we will have a WACT meeting on the 13th, early morning breakfast meeting prior to the Wyoming Community College Commission regular meeting on the 13th of December in Rock Springs.
Thank you very much, Ed. Excellent. You spent a lot of time doing this. Okay, I think it's time for you to make your motion for the consent agenda, please. Ed, would you like to do that?
Yes, Madam Chair. Move the acceptance of the financial reports.
Second.
All those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We move on to approval items. Approval of the resolution declaring the results of the November 5th, 2013 bond election. I think Lisa would like to say a few words to us at this time.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry I missed the euphoria 2 weeks ago. I was at a I was at another board meeting for Cheyenne Frontier Day, so I'm sorry I missed that. Trustee DuBois, thank you for your kind words. I did want to take just a few moments. I know the night is getting late, but I wanted to take a few moments and thank everyone. There are some great people in this room who helped and some who are not. The Division of Institutional Advancement worked very hard on this campaign, and I know that many of you have already thanked them, but for the record, they worked tirelessly to make all of this happen. And the Foundation Board and the Board of Trustees really partnered well. I know a year ago, we worked together to put together a partnership that I think you all saw come together and really made some great things happen. So I wanted to point out especially George McIlvain and Billy Adelman. They worked very hard. They put together a call bank on the very last day and called all of the people who endorsed the project. So we had some amazing volunteers. Our steering committee, Jerry Grego was on our steering committee, as well as our trustees and foundation board members. We had a lot of volunteers on this campus who helped us, and community members. Dan Baxter's wife was one of our best volunteers. She actually came for every one of our events that we needed help for. So I wanted to make sure and thank everyone. I wanted to also let you know that we are working on a grant with the Wyoming Business Council, so we're moving forward on some other projects. We also put out an ad in the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. I hope you all saw it, so we wanted to make sure that the community knows that we are thanking them as well. And Dan Baxter's here tonight. He, as you all know, he's our financial advisor, but he's also been my advisor. We worked together on the health sciences campaign as well, and just so you all know, I talked to him, I think, every week on the phone, and I think we emailed just about every day. So he's part of our team. He's definitely much more than just our financial advisor. He's, I think, our biggest cheerleader, so please know that he's part of our family, and I wanted to make sure that you all know how much work he did. I would call him and say, "What are you doing tomorrow at 10? We're going to the newspaper," and he'd say, "Whatever you need." So I think he went to just as many meetings. Yeah, he went to just as many meetings as the rest of us did. So I just wanted to make sure and let you all know that we appreciate every one of you who worked so hard. And Carol didn't want me to keep reminding everyone that she did go to Pine Bluffs, but you know, we all went to a lot of different places and a lot of different meetings.
The problem is, she makes it sound like I walked out there, which I did not.
Well, this was great, and last January, I think we were all wondering if we could get it done, but there are a lot of wonderful people here and a lot of great teamwork, so thank you all for making it happen. And now the foundation is hoping for this match money in the legislative session, so we'll get back to the business of raising scholarships and helping our students. So we're excited about our next adventures. So,
Well, thank you to both you and
Thank
Dan.
you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
may I ask Dan a question?
of course.
Could you outline the process now for the selling of the bonds, the sequencing, and maybe even timing? Sure.
Good question.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you so much, and congratulations to all of you for a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of hard work, and it is such a milestone for LCCC to get a vote of confidence from the community. And going into this, no idea that we'd win every election precinct west of Archer, so that was wonderful. So congratulations again. But, good question. Tonight, of course, we have the resolution confirming the election results, and that's something that's standard on a bond election campaign. And so where do we go from here? With regard to the bonds, you now have $25 million in bond authorization for both projects that were approved by the voters. So you can sell that bond authorization in one or more installments over the course of the next 24 months, 36 months, however long it takes. I guess from our standpoint, our major concern would be, of course, the economy and interest rates. We do have limitations within the bond question, as to maximum rates and so forth. And so we're going to keep a close eye on that for the board and see where we're going with that. But right now, interest rates still are very low. We're still looking, if we sold them today, you'd be looking at an average interest rate of only 3.5% or so, which is very good for 20, 25 million, whatever you decide you need to do. So that's all very positive, and with the mill levy and given the tax base, the mill levy would come in at or below, of course, the estimates we provided to the electorate. So what we really need to do, I think, I need to sit down with President Schaefer and talk about the plan, with the legislature, as far as grant funding there. I know the foundation will be working on some grant funding through the Business Council for the project. Obviously, the election provides a lot of momentum for the building program going forward, which is all positive. So one of the things we can take a look at in the near future is looking at selling a tranche of those bonds, maybe not 25 million, but maybe something like 9 or 10 million, and get to talk about the timing on when to do that. Early this year or maybe right after the legislature meets, so you get some funding there right away. One of the things that we would probably take a look at doing if we did that would be to sell the bonds out of the 25 million that would mature over the 15-year period. We want to take a look at selling the latter bonds first, maybe it's bank qualified bonds, and get those in and outstanding, and those normally carry the highest interest rates. And then going forward, we would sell the second tranche down the road, and those would be the shorter maturities that would have the lower interest rates. And that then provides the board with some protection in the event interest rates go up, before we can get the second tranche sold. So there's some strategies we need to think about. It's all good news, though. I just met with the Laramie School Board the other day. They had their final cost estimates come in, but from their architect and an independent third party, 95% of their architectural work is done. And the estimates for their project costs came within 1.5% of estimates. So there weren't any huge overruns or anything. So it looks like we got a pretty stable environment in which to bid a construction project. So that looked really good. And they're going ahead and getting all their bond authorizations sold. They don't want to, bet on the market or, take any gambles. They want to get it done. So they'll have their full 25 million in place by the first part of January, and they're bidding their project in February, and they're off to the races. So, so we're excited about it. Look forward to the next phase. A lot of work ahead, for sure. But it's going to be an exciting project for LCCC, and we're hoping it's going to make the difference in a lot of people's lives, a lot of students' lives. $50 million project is a big project for LCCC, and this is really a big event. So
Yes.
Again, congratulations.
And congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dan,
right.
and Lisa, and everyone who helped.
Any other questions on the resolution or anything this evening, or Madam Chair?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we've had our report. Staff recommends that the Board of Trustees adopts the resolution declaring the results of the November 5th, 2013 bond election. I guess that means we have to approve it.
I make the motion to prove it. Then I'd like to speak to it, too.
You'd like to speak to it? Let's get a second, and then I'll let you speak to it. Ed, second it? Yes, please.
I have a rather nitpicking observation. In the resolution on page 4, where after the whereas, it lists the number of votes for, and there's a whereas that says, it appears that a majority. We're past appearance. It's really a majority. Is there a reason why we need to have it appears?
If you would like to strike that word.
Yeah, because whereas a majority of the qualified registered electors. So strike it, it appears that. That would be an amendment.
So if we're going to sign this document this evening, how will we do that?
Can't you just strike
You
it?
can
in
just strike
Can
addition?
we just strike it and then sign it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Any more questions or comments?
Was there a second to the amendment?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The second approval amendment, number 1, to the contract.
Now the motion, Madam Chair,
Yes,
now the motion as amended,
yes.
we need to vote on that.
I thought we just did.
No, we voted on the amendment, I'm sorry.
Oh, we voted on the amendment. Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the
Amended resolution.
amended resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Well, gosh, you're all over it, thanks.
I told
That's
you it
what
was
we
gonna
have
take.
legal counsel for. Sorry.
Okay.
You have to pay him tonight.
It's all right, Don. There's nothing illegal happening here.
Not at all. Okay, approval of the amendment number 1 to the contract agreement for legal counsel.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Amen.
Members of the board, if you recall at your last meeting, I shared with you a memo from our legal counsel that was generated at my request after our annual review. And what they did is they shared with you their estimated workload over the past year, serving the college, providing legal services for us, and what they requested. I said I would go back and then do my analysis and bring you a recommendation. You have that in a memorandum. Before I get into some of the details in the memorandum that I'm giving in the recommendation, I just want to go on record and say that every person that I have spoken with, and including yours truly, who have interacted with our attorneys, have been very, very pleased with what they provided in terms of service, commitment, consistency, presence, always showing up and really being great supporters and providing good legal counsel to the college. And so I think for an early relationship, the value that you're receiving as Board of Trustees and we're receiving as a college has been exceptional. They've done a fine job, and I think they'll continue to do that and probably do even much better as we have our relationship mature. So I spent quite a bit of time going through and sort of thinking about what their request has been for an amendment to the contract, and where we are at, and some of the parameters around an amendment or looking at this contract amendment this time. So I won't go through it in detail, but in my memorandum I share with you a few bullet points of considerations that I was chewing on as I was thinking about what to recommend to you. And at the very bottom you have your recommendation, and while it is not the exact recommendation that was in the request from our attorneys, it is an increase and an amendment to their contract that would functionally change the monthly fee that we pay them from $4,900 a month to $5,700 a month. And again, I would encourage you to direct me to also hold an annual review, take a look and see where we're at after 2 years of the relationship, look to see if there's been changes in the work that we've asked of our attorneys, up, down, or how that is, and then make another recommendation if we need to as we move forward. You also received as part of your materials the contract, the original contract, and then you have the proposed amendment as well. And so with that, I would certainly pause for any questions, and I would encourage you to ask your legal counsel if they have any additional input or thoughts.
Sure. Any questions from the board? Our legal folks, Tara and Deb, and Gay is here as well. Does this contract meet your expectations at this time with what Joe has said? I know you hope for more money, but
Well, I guess.
Don't give an opening now.
but
So
what do you
let's
think?
talk about that now. Yes, we feel that we are here, we are ready to serve. We've evaluated our time, and so we looked at that, and we want to continue to provide that level of service. And so we evaluated our needs based on that.
Sure. Will this new amount meet your expectations at this time?
Yes, thank you.
We very much value you. I think that you're a great addition to our board, and to your legal advice has been very good, except for this one item that Don brought up. But he's, working with you.
Because we're working together.
We're all working together. And it's been fun. I mean, I think it's been very much fun to have you here because you have a lightness to your legal advice that's well received by this board.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Thank you, Joe, very much. You clarified that. Okay, the staff recommends that we approve the amendment for Woodhouse Road and Nethercott for the purposes of legal counsel to the college for the annual sum of $68,400, $5,700 per month.
I move approval.
A second, please?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And thank you for serving.
Thank you.
Yes,
Madam-
when does it start?
Oh.
That's a good question. Just,
Yep.
good night.
Actually, Madam Chair, members of the board, this is an annual amendment, so it's actually going to be retroactive to the start of their second year. So it starts, I believe, effective in October, so we actually we will owe you some money.
Yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
That was a good question. Okay. Thank you. Ed, did you have something?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to respond to Trustee Erickson's question from the last board meeting about where would the monies come from. And those funds will come from the reserve, but they are in the trustees' budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's all clarified. Additional items, information only, and then next meetings, I'll just let you read that all yourselves. New business, I would like to have one meeting in the month of December, on December 4th, and dispense with the December 18th meeting. We might have a longer meeting on the 4th, but that would mean that if you were traveling or wanting to spend more time with family, that you would have one extra night. So I'm up for discussion on that. Joe and I kind of reviewed things and thought we didn't have a lot of business to attend to on the 18th at this time.
I think this is what we have traditionally done, isn't it? At least
I
for the
think you are
past couple
right.
of years?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, let's do that. We will have just one meeting, December 4th. Is there any public comment that was not addressed during the meeting? There being none?
Madam Chair, I need to comment on a couple things, if I could, please.
You may.
Your business under your.
When I
New
talked
business, okay.
when I talked about the WACT advocacy, those 6 items, I would simply ask that on that December meeting, if we could have a resolution to support those as legislative agenda items.
Perfect, okay.
And I would also like to, at that meeting, have a few minutes due to the support of the board, which paid my registration to attend the Wyoming Business Alliance, the Governor's Forum, and I'd like to report back on that forum some of the items that were covered during that meeting, during the next meeting, if I could.
Okay.
And again, not very lengthy. I won't take more than an hour.
Okay. Okay, sounds perfect.
Having said that, I would move that we adjourn to an executive session.
Thank you very much. We are
For purpose?
adjourning for
For purpose.
personnel matters.
For a personnel matter, I'm sorry.
And during this time, we want to sign the documents while everyone leaves. Is that correct?